Are the Leafs about to embark on the most important week of their regular season? We'll debate this and recap the Leafs win over the Rangers Saturday evening. All that more coming up on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centered podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. What's going on, Dave? How was your weekend? What'd you get up to, buddy?
Busy weekend, busy one.
So
I ended up
how'd your gig go?
gig went well. We were literally playing our set as that third period was happening. So
How's that? Is there a TV at the bar at least so you can keep an eye on it? You're just sitting there.
I was playing piano and I'm playing the piano. All of a sudden, in the corner of my eye, I can see what's going. I catch my eye catches a glimpse of the TV, and at that point.
Revo and Rempy.
No, I missed that one live. I went back and watched it after, but I did hear the cheers for that fight though. I missed it, but I heard people. It was weird because like we heard people cheering. We're like, are they cheering for us or are they cheering for the game? So that was fun. But
have you had a chance though? Actually, just talking about that fight, have you had a chance to go back and listen to Joe Bowen's call of the fight? It was awesome. It was awesome. Honestly, if no one has heard it, go look it up. You can probably find it on YouTube. Joe Bowen, like Rempy versus Ryan Reeves fight.
We'll link it into the comments. I'll make sure to put it in the description if those.
Yeah, because somebody said like, "Hey, you got to go listen to this." Someone synced it up with the video, and it was awesome. A great call, and it's funny because that was kind of the talk. This Matt Rempe kid, a lot of talk has been, he's caused a stir in the National Hockey League over the course of the last little bit. And, there was the conversation of whether or not him and Ryan Reeves are going to fight. Reeves was asked pregame, you're going to go? And he's like, I don't have the script. We'll see what happens. And they ended up fighting with like a couple of minutes to go in the game. And it was a pretty good tilt. Like I thought that it was, two heavyweights that were going at it. I think Ryan Reeves definitely got now has respect, I guess you could say, for Rempe on that one. It was a pretty good tilt. A couple of haymakers landed on both sides. Rempe was very jab happy, I would say, for a good portion of it. But overall, though, like it was a really good game. Like just to go back to let's break down this game as a whole. I thought from start to finish, it was very entertaining. You saw some good play on both sides. You saw the goaltenders make some pretty good saves. I thought Ilya Samsonov really came prepared to play a game like that, especially in OT where I think he was under siege a little bit more than Shesterkin was, and he came up big, man. Flashing the leather, putting a little extra sauce on a couple of those stops. I thought that the Leafs, it was a well-deserved victory against the Rangers on home ice, and that's a good team. Like New York, who had won, was 9 of their last 10 games heading into that game. Like that's a good team, man. Someone who, you look at that squad and think, hey, that they could be contenders coming out of the East, and Toronto proved that they could go mano toe to toe with them. That's a pretty good sign if you're Toronto.
It is. That's a game there where like the Rangers, like the Leafs were one of the hotter teams of late. But then there was also the Rangers, who were like on a 10-game winning streak.
They had won 9 in a row, and then they had lost the game, and then won another game. Yeah, and then they beat Columbus afterwards. So they had won 9 of their last 10, or 10 of their last 11, actually.
Yeah, like that. Like that's a team. That's a measuring stick game. Like it gets used a lot, but that's what these type of games are like. The Rangers are a team that's built for the playoffs. Everyone's talked about how they're always among the top of the the food chain when it comes to cup contenders because they're built for that. So for the Leafs, this is a good opportunity for them to see, okay, what do we do well? What parts of our game really work well against a team like the Rangers, and what areas of our game don't work well? And we saw that in this game. I think that's what made this game entertaining, is that you saw a lot of the good things the Leafs have been doing the last little bit. You've also seen what's not worked for this team the last few games where they haven't exactly been themselves.
Yeah. I want to show you one thing that to me is extremely it's a good sign. I'm going to screen share really quickly, and I'm going to show you one thing, and you tell me exactly what you think it is that I'm looking at that to me is a positive thing. Well, what am I looking at here? What looks good to you, Dave?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of red in front of the net.
That's right. Red in front of the net, which means the Maple Leafs were getting themselves in this area right here, right in front of the net, and getting those opportunities. And that's exactly what you need to do come playoff time. That's where you're going to score 80% of your goals come playoff time. And look where the Leafs, they scored one right and tight. Another one came from the hash mark there. So the Maple Leafs, they played well. I thought that they were able to work their way inside, which is exactly what you have to do against this Rangers team. And they showed, okay, we can play your game. We can battle in front of the net. And you'll notice on the other side, not a whole lot, a lot of green, a lot of light colors in front of Samsonov. They did a pretty good job negating a lot of chances in tight. They kept the Rangers to the outside for a majority of that game, which is exactly what you're going to have to do come playoff time. So it was a good thing. It was a good game overall. And what was interesting too is you look at that lineup right from the get-go. Obviously, Ilya Lyubushkin left the game with an injury. We'll talk about that in a moment. But right from puck drop, you saw the lineup and you said to yourself, this could potentially be the game one lineup. Like this could be the combinations, lines 1 through 4, pairs 1 through 3, and Samsonov or Woll, I suppose. Maybe you have that conversation who starts in net, but that could potentially be your playoff lineup. And when you look at the way that they played, Yarncroc returning, I thought he was great. Thought he had a solid return. He was good on both sides of the ice. That was nice to see. You saw William Nylander when he got a little slap on the wrist, sat down on the bench for the back half of that third period or first period after giving up that goal, cheating on offense a little bit. He came out in the second and third and was way better, much better. So he responded. Thought overall, man, it was just a really quality game. And you look at that squad and you say to yourself, it's a good team. This is a team that might be able to win some games come playoff time in a playoff fashion, just like they did against the Rangers.
Yeah, they can do the different things that a team needs to be able to do, right? It's the balance, right? The balance 1 through 4. We always talk to how this team was always top heavy. And in the third and fourth line, you just hope, it's like a hope and a prayer that they do something. Now, with the way that this lineup is situated, you can see how every line can contribute in a meaningful way, right? Yeah. Is the fourth line going to go out there and score a bunch of goals? No, but what they're going to do is they're going to make life a living heck for the opposing team because they're going to hammer them in their own zone. And if things get a little testy, Ryan Reeves is gonna step in, right? Like, I think up front, the forward lines, I'm less concerned about. Although defensively, as Sheldon Keefe talked about, the second line needs to, reel things in a little bit more and not cheat.
Yeah.
We always know that the issue's on the back end, right? That's where things are. That's why we've always constantly said the upgrades could be made there, because I think up front, how much more can you really change to improve what's already, I think, pretty good, right?
Yeah, I agree. There's been some discourse and conversation. Like I've heard some people suggest like adding Adam Henrique. Like if you're just not certain that Max Domi can get it done as the 2C for this team in the playoffs, maybe you go and get somebody else, or you get, if John Tavares goes back up to play there, you get a traditional third center who's, more of a two-way guy, like an Adam Henrique or a Scott Lawton potentially. I don't know. I'm pretty satisfied, I think, with the group up front. We'll see what they end up doing on the blue line. They did lose a member of the blue line in that game, obviously. Ilya Lyubushkin got hit by Matt Rempe. He did not return, which is, kind of a spoiler for his debut back in Toronto. Let's come back and talk about that and see if maybe that'll cause for any more ramifications for the Maple Leafs with the trade deadline now just a few days away. So we'll get to all of that and more, and we'll tee up tonight's game, Leafs and Bruins. So Toronto getting right back at it. It's a big week for them. 2 against the Bruins. You get the trade deadline. This is a massive week for the Maple Leafs. We'll preview all of that on the other side. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NHL players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. The Maple Leafs with a 4-3 win via the shootout against the Rangers on Saturday night. It was a quality victory for Toronto, definitely one that makes you think this team is trending in the right direction. Unfortunately, though, the Leafs did lose a defenseman in the game, Ilya Lyubushkin. What was the update that you saw post-game about his return or possibly non-return, I suppose? Like, what did you hear after the game about Lyubushkin's
Well, obviously, Sheldon Keefe said it was a head injury. They didn't say concussion right away because I guess they got to further test to even make it a concussion, similar to what they did with Giordano. But I think Samsonov said he spoke to him after the game, said he wasn't walking around, said he was not he was hurt but not too severe. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. Will he play on Monday? I say unlikely, but again, that's just speculated on what we heard from the coach after the game. So I think that's I guess, and because they didn't practice Sunday, we're gonna hear more about it on Monday. So something to watch for on the Twitter platform or the X platform on Monday and see if he's in. But I would say likely not in if you're a betting man.
If you're thinking big picture and, when it comes to this injury, I suppose, by Lyubushkin, and he's like him and Liljegren, the lone right shot defenseman. I mean, does it make you think maybe they still do have to add another right D-man? Because if one of those two go down, you're right back into a situation where you've just got too many lefties. Do you think, seeing this happen would maybe make Treliving think, all right, maybe I still do have to add one more guy on the right side, whether it's someone who's better than Lyubushkin or, someone who's could be the 7th, 8th defenseman. But I don't know. For me, I was just thinking perhaps with this injury, it kind of proves, all right, maybe we do need at least one more guy on the right side to fill out the depth there.
Well, we kind of said it, right? Again, I know some people saw Lyubushkin as a patchwork addition. I said, no, this is about getting depth on the right side that you don't have.
Yeah.
Right. And we knew that if they truly wanted to make an upgrade, they would have to go out and get another right shot defenseman. And so I think they're trying to figure out which player is available. Can they actually get a team to offer out maybe a guy that hasn't been put out on the market? Right. And so I think another guy is needed. But the thing is, teams are not giving away right shots, and they're going to cost a premium because there's not that many out there.
Yeah. The name that was thrown around over the weekend by Elliot Friedman was Nick Jensen, right shot defenseman for the Washington Capitals. I don't think that's the first time we've heard of the Maple Leafs kind of circling in on the Jensen train. He is a little bit older now. I think he's 33, where, a few years back when he was still in Detroit, I think Toronto had interest in bringing him in. He kind of is a similar mold, I guess, just a defenseman, right shot guy. Has decent analytics, but he's got some term left on his contract. The question is, like, is Washington going to move him? Like this, that the Capitals are in a playoff race now. Like the Capitals are pretty close to Philadelphia and possibly getting into a playoff spot. I don't even know if he'd be available. I was kind of curious to hear that name pop up.
Well, I think the big one, obviously, you brought up was the term, right? Like anytime a player has term, the Leafs are like, oh, don't know if we could do that, right? And like, why would Washington retain salary? Like someone said, oh, they can retain 50%. Why would Washington want to retain for another 3 years? I think it was, or 2 or 3 years. That makes no sense to me. Like, and they're so close. And as you said, like they're within striking distance of a potential playoff spot. Like Philly, can we trust that they can keep this going for as long as they can? Like the Lightning haven't exactly been playing great. That's an opening there, unless the Noah Hannafin rumors come true and we just all hit our head against the wall because Tampa always figures out a way.
Yeah.
But for me, Washington, like that Metro Division, that third spot wide open in my opinion. Even the Islanders, who I don't have much faith in, even the Devils, like the Devils are not that far off either. They're 7 points out. I think they have a game in hand.
They played today or Sunday, and they
lost. They did lose, didn't they?
Yeah, they lost to the Kings.
Yeah, I mean, unless they get a goaltender, that might not change much for the Devils. But I don't know, like if you're a team that's somewhat, and I guess this is the frustrating part for a GM that's trying to make upgrades. There's teams that'll still feel they're in it and don't want to give up, and they're probably just give up already so we can get players from your team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that's why, like, we brought up a couple of guys in Seattle. It seems like, now when you see Nashville, the streak that they're on, they're starting to separate themselves. And now all of a sudden it looks like there's a pretty clear, like 8 teams out west. And so maybe we've seen a couple of these teams who are on the outside looking in out west start to kind of fall off, right? So that's where Calgary comes into play. If they're expected to move on from Hannafin and maybe even Markstrom and perhaps something more, they've already moved on from Lindholm and Chris Tanev. They could start to fall out of it even more. Obviously, we've talked about Seattle. We've talked about a couple of teams out there. There's a bunch of them. The Blues are on the outside looking in now, and same thing with Minnesota. So at some point, some of these teams are going to have to throw in the white towel, like, and just start selling off pieces. Hopefully, at least it happens. So we have an entertaining deadline this week.
Like Calgary's won 5 straight games, like unbelievable. And like I'm sure,
yeah.
And like, if in my opinion, they should stick the course. And if these young players play well enough, and you push for a playoff spot,
stick the course would mean keeping Hannafin.
Well,
you can't.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean like trade Hannafin. Like I mean like let the young guys do what they need to do. I mean Markstrom's the other one too, right?
Yeah,
it's Hannafin and Markstrom. I think Markstrom kind of hinted at maybe wanting to get.
Yeah, that was interesting. But we're getting off topic here. Like back to the Leafs. I mean, when it comes to targets, like once these teams start to fall out, maybe that makes for more targets that the Leafs can go through. And but circling back to the Seattle thing with like an Adam Larson or Will Borgen potentially bringing them in. But Nick Jensen, like that team's still going, right? The Washington Capitals, they're very much still going, it looks like. So a really interesting situation. And Brad Treliving did speak on Friday after the Lyubushkin acquisition and also spoke on Mark Giordano. And he doesn't seem like he's like trading the first round pick is off the table, even for a rental. He said that they'd be careful about doing that, but it's not off the table. So will be interesting to see what he can get done over the next few days here. Trade deadline coming up this Friday, 3 p.m. I'm certain that there will be at least one more move made, a sizable move made by Brad Treliving to get this team back into, not back, but like give this team an opportunity to get themselves to the level that they know they can get to, back into the contention with the rest of the best teams in the Eastern Conference at the very least. But we'll see. Speaking of best teams in the East, it's a big week. Like I said, they've got the trade deadline on Friday, but they've also got 2 games against the Boston Bruins, and the Leafs are actually in striking distance to possibly catching up to Boston if they can have a successful week here. Let's come back and let's tee up tonight's game, the first of the 2 meetings between these 2 teams, and we'll do that next. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, and their best price guarantee, Game Time will take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and they're obsessed with finding new ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up until the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. We got new episodes coming out each weekday, Monday through Friday, whichever platform you use to get your podcasts, including a video format up on YouTube as well. Hit subscribe, would be greatly appreciated. We are still on our road to 5K subscribers. When we get to 5K, which we're only like 300 and something subscribers away from getting that mark, we'll be giving away a jersey, and we're hoping to get there by deadline day. It's a little bit of a lofty goal at this point, but we're hoping to get to
go big or go home, Mike. Go big or home.
Go big or go home is right. So hopefully, if you're listening, you haven't yet, subscribe and get your friends and family too as well if they want to be part of the Locked On Leafs family and keep up to date with what's going on with the Leafs on a daily basis. And speaking of daily basis, tonight they got a game against the big bad Boston Bruins. And the Bruins, Dave, not playing their best hockey of late, but they've played a lot of hockey of late. They've had like 7 or 8 of their last 10 games go to a overtime, or like this team is consistently going to overtime. It's like when Toronto had that earlier this season. But they've only won 3 of their last 10 games, Dave. This is a good opportunity maybe to take advantage of a Bruins team that's stuck in a bit of a rut and try and pick up some points. They're currently 6 points behind Boston with 2 games in hand. So if they can pick up, pick up a win here tonight against the Bruins, claw to within 4 points with a couple games in hand, they'll be in a good spot.
It's a Bruins team that's also hurting right now. Like they lost Pavel Zacha in their last game. Matt Grzelcyk, I think, has been day to day. Matt Pultris is out, I think, for the rest of the year with a shoulder injury. Hampus Lindholm's been out. Like they got they're dealing with some injuries, and yeah, they've been annoying getting like 5 extra points, and that's why like the Leafs have been on such a good run, but so have the Panthers, and the Bruins have been getting these overtime points to at least not allow the Leafs to pass them, because I think if they don't get these overtime points, the Leafs would be passing them in the standings right now, or at least close to it.
They've got 5 overtime points in their last 10 games, so there'd be a 1-point difference, I suppose, if they were to have lost all of those.
Yeah. And so over this stretch, I think it's an 8-game stretch for the Bruins. Like they're giving up like 3.6 goals per game. Like that's not the Bruins' identity. They're supposed to rely on their, good defending. Goaltending is supposed to be big for them, and like it's been for the most part. But like they're not scoring. They're 2.9 goals, 4 per game. So I think for the Leafs, this is one of those weeks you're like, that's the opening.
Yeah.
And this, I think, happened last year. The Leafs are they had a potential opportunity to get closer to Boston. And then they lost against the Bruins, and the Bruins were like, okay, we're going to leave you guys in the rearview mirror now.
Well, the Bruins ended up having quite literally the greatest season of all time historically. But yeah, I'm looking at the last 10 games for the Bruins, and they've gone to overtime or shootout in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their last 10 games. And yeah, they're coming off a 5-1 loss to the Islanders yesterday, and they've lost 4 of their last 5 games, and 3 of them have been via the shootout or overtime. So yeah, they're getting those points. It's so strange, man. Like, they've just been such a beacon of consistency for a couple of years now, and it seems as though maybe they're running out of gas. Like, they got off to such a hot start, and it seems like maybe they're starting to run out of gas a little bit, and now they're really starting to get tested with the lack of depth down the middle. And look, Toronto, with what we're seeing now with Domi playing, as well as he is at 2C, and Tavares now at the third line center, like, that's great depth down the middle. Like, to go Matthews, Domi, Tavares, and David Kampf, great depth, and that they should be able to win a lot of those matchups.
They should, right? And I think what this Leafs team has realized, especially the game against the Rangers when Riley was out, they're more aware now of the situation that they're in and how much easier their life will be if they pick up these important wins, right? Now, did they drop the ball against Vegas this past week? Yes, they did. They didn't against the Arizona Coyotes, thankfully. But like, I think this team has a better understanding of how crucial this week is. They need to show Brad Treliving that maybe invest in this team a little bit. What do? They went on a 7-game winning streak. So I think they're going to be up for the challenge. It's not going to be easy. Divisional matchups are never easy, especially against Boston. But I think what we've seen from this Leafs team, you should be confident that they could come up against Boston and have a good game, and at least a close game. I think a win is always possible with this Leafs team. But
you look at the last 3 games that the Leafs and Bruins have played, like, they've all gone to overtime, right? Yeah. Each of the last 3. Now, the Bruins have been successful, and the Bruins have won 5 straight against Toronto, actually. I didn't realize they had won that many in a row, but yeah, they've won 5 in a row against Toronto. The Leafs haven't won since November 5th of 2022. Dave, was the last time the Leafs picked up a win against the Boston Bruins. So they're due, Dave, and I think this could be the game that they do that and pick up that win and inch themselves closer. I think a big question that I have, and now I'll get you to give me your thoughts and answer it first, Dave. Who do you go with in goal, Ilya Samsonov or Joe Woll? Because I think tonight, whoever Sheldon Keefe decides to start in goal could be very telling as to who he believes might have the inside track at the starting gig when we start to get closer into the playoffs.
I think he might actually go with Joseph Woll tonight because I only have 1 day between games. Sammy that was a tough game against the Rangers, and I'm wondering if Keefe thinks about that and says, you know what, we got Joe Woll who's fresh here. Let's get him into that first one. And I get the sentiment you're going with. Like, this is a huge game. And then the next time they play Boston, it's on the second game of a back-to-back. So whoever's getting that start later in the week might already be in a tougher position, right? I think Joe Woll, just because if let's say there was 2 days in between the Rangers game and the Bruins game, then I think you have I would feel like Samsonov would have the more of the advantage to go. I just think Keefe doesn't want to throw Samsonov in a game like that off just 1 day of rest.
Why not? He's been doing it for the last
But why would you make? But why make him do it if you? I'm confident that you can put Joseph
normal.
Woll.
Like that's normal. Just like
I know it's normal,
every other day.
But here's the thing: when you have a tandem like this and you're confident in Joseph Woll, that's what you got Joseph Woll there for.
Well, okay, if you feel Woll is the better guy, sure, but I'm not going to buy the argument that because they only had 1 day in between games. Like I'm not going to buy rest as the reason why you go with Joseph Woll. If you have
I
more
personally
trust in him winning and getting you the 2 points, different conversation.
Now, here's the other thing. You just said the Bruins have won 5 straight against Toronto. I think the last one that Joseph Woll played in, he played incredible against Boston. They didn't lose that game because Joseph Woll wasn't good. Samsonov hasn't really played well against Boston. I think that the matchup might favor Joseph Woll a little more than Samsonov.
When did they have didn't he get hurt he got hurt against Boston last year?
Yeah, and that was actually a game they won because they won that game it was a
2-1, right?
It was 2-1, and he hurt himself.
Yeah, that was the last win that they've had against the Bruins, November 5th of 2022. Yeah, it was the last time that they beat the Bruins. Joe Woll is probably the correct answer. He probably starts tonight, I would think, but just because they want to probably get him some games as opposed to get Sammy rest. The only thing that I've had this thought process when it comes to Samsonov before. I remember thinking this last year too, and at points this season, Samsonov plays at his best when he's given a stretch of games in a row. Like when he gets an opportunity to get into a groove is when he plays at his best. I find that when he gets into a tandem where it's literally like every other game, he sometimes loses his groove a little bit, and that's where things start to slide for him. Like that's where things got really bad for him, is when he wasn't able to start, back-to-back games, not back-to-back days, but back-to-back games or 3 games in a row. And, things really started to go south for him. So that's the only thing that I get concerned about when it comes to Samsonov here is, you don't want to get him in a situation where he gets out of the groove that he's in. Because he's been playing decent. Like he played really well Saturday night.
So this season, when he's had 1 day of rest, he is 3-0. But he actually has better stats when he has more days off. Actually,
what are the better stats?
So if he has 2 days rest, he's 4-1 with a 3.28 goals against and an 892 save percentage. 1 day's rest, 4.03 goals against and an 861 save percentage.
Yeah. Now the only thing about that is like
his seat, but the thing is, it's tough to look at his stats this year because the stats haven't been good for him, and he's only just getting himself back to being average, right?
Yeah, like the first half of the year was just brutal. So like if those games came in the first half, like it's just going to throw his stats out of whack. But I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. That's something I think is going to be worth monitoring throughout the day too. Who does Sheldon Keefe end up tapping on the shoulder to get the start tonight against the Bruins? It's a big game. It's a big.
Does Sheldon Keefe keep the Bruins guessing? He's done it before.
Could do that. Well, I mean, he's probably gonna give the answer at morning skate or like just before the game.
Yeah,
perhaps, or whoever skates off or whoever isn't at morning skate. Like usually Samsonov, if he's starting, he doesn't participate. Where if he is going to be the backup, then he will participate in the morning skate. So that's usually another kind of thing that you could tell who's going to start based on that and who comes off the ice first. But we'll see. It should be a good game, though. Always is. Leafs and Bruins. Hopefully Toronto, though, can get on the right side here for the first time in 5 outings and pick up a valuable 2 points. In regulation would also be nice, so that the Bruins don't get any. And at that point, the Leafs find themselves in a really good spot if they can make that happen. All right, final word, Dave.
This is I'm like that game tomorrow night or tonight, as we're going to be releasing this. It's a big one, and this is where I want to really see what this Leafs team is made of. Like this to me, like you've won all these games with Riley O. We talked about that being a turning point of the season. Like I think this right here is going to be like this might make or break how things go this week and how this season goes, because you don't want to give the Bruins confidence that they can beat you, right? Leave a little doubt in the Bruins, especially because it's trending towards that being round one.
Yeah.
Similar to Tampa last year.
The Bruins have the most pity points in the NHL. Just looking at that now.
Remember when everyone was complaining the Leafs had the most pity points?
Yeah. Well, everyone was complaining that it wasn't the pity points, it was the lack of regulation wins.
Yeah.
I think was more so the situation here. The
Bruins
Bruins
only have 3 more.
They're losing in overtime. Yeah, they've picked it up. The regulation wins definitely have picked up, although they have the same amount of regulation wins as the Buffalo Sabres. So that's
yeah,
not
but Buffalo's
awesome.
still terrible, so that's fine.
They have less regulation wins than the New Jersey Devils, who are currently not in a playoff spot. So they're not quite, out of the mud when it comes to regulation wins. And if it comes down to, I don't know, some sort of tiebreaker with regulation wins, I don't like their chances when it comes to that. But hopefully they can win enough games where it just ain't going to matter. Doesn't matter. Have the higher points percentage. That's all that matters. All right, let's get out of here, Dave. Fun show. Good stuff. Should be a good one tonight. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like and a comment if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed the show today. We'll be back to another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll recap the game against the big bad Bruins. Go Leafs, go. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.